Welcome to Chasing the Lost. This podcast contains adult themes and violence and is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Shanda Sharer was born in the Pineville Community Hospital in Pineville, Kentucky, June 6, 1979. Her parents were Stephen and Jacqueline. Shanda's parents divorced when she was very young. Her mother remarried, and they moved to Louisville, Kentucky. There, she attended 5th and 6th grades at St. Paul School. She was on the cheerleading, volleyball, and softball teams. When her mother divorced again, the family moved in June of 1991 to New Albany, Indiana. This is where Shanda's dad lived. Shanda was enrolled in the Hazelwood Middle School. She was a good student. She wrote poetry, she was active in sports, and she had a plan to one day become a nurse. She was very close to her parents and to her step-parents. She was known to be outgoing and friendly. She was not a girl to get in trouble. Her mother did allow her a few freedoms, like wearing makeup and tight clothing, but nothing very revealing. Shanda had a natural beauty, a huge smile, and she made friends very easily. She attracted the attention of both girls and boys at her new school. Things were going well for the most part at the new school until she got into an altercation with a girl named Amanda. Amanda and Shanda got into a fight in the hallway, and both ended up with a week's worth of detention. During that week, they became friends. There was one major problem: Amanda's girlfriend, Melinda. The two girls, Amanda and Shanda, began to write letters back and forth. They'd slip them into each other's lockers. This was before the internet and cell phones. The friendship and the relationship was progressing, but Melinda was becoming extremely jealous. Amanda was trying to please both of the girls and give them both attention. Melinda didn't like this. She began to harass Shanda. Every time she would see her in the lunchroom or the hallways, she would go after her and laugh and call her ugly. She also wrote her a few letters. Before we get too deep into these girls and the dynamics of their relationships, I'm going to tell you more about Melinda and Amanda. It was the mid-1960s. 16-year-old Marjorie married 20-year-old Larry Lovelace. They had a big wedding, and she was very proud of it. She was ready to start a family and have a home with a white picket fence. She was very much in love. So much so that she ignored most of the warning signs with Larry. She was a junior in high school. He would follow her to school to see who she was speaking to. If it was anyone that he didn't approve of, he would fly into a rage. The stress got so bad she ended up quitting before she ever graduated. Within the first year of their marriage, Larry was drafted into the Army, and in May of 1967, he went to Vietnam. Margie was very upset. She had just discovered she was pregnant, and she was afraid to be alone. For a while, she stayed with her parents and gave up the little apartment that she and Larry had. The two wrote back and forth, and she even went to visit him once while he was stationed in Hawaii, leaving her newborn baby girl, Michelle, back at home with her parents. After 13 months of duty, Larry had 6 months left to go when he returned to the States. Margie and her new baby, Michelle, packed up and went to Fort Hood with Larry while he completed his military service. While they were out there, Larry had all of his teeth pulled, even though there was nothing wrong with them. The dentist was very much against the idea, as was Marjorie. But Larry insisted. His back teeth bothered him, and he wanted a perfect smile. And since the Army was going to pay the bill, he wanted it done now. Throughout the marriage, Margie and Larry would argue quite a bit. The main topic was sex. She felt Larry was far too sexual. He would want to have sex even if the baby was awake or in the same bed with them, and it made her very uncomfortable. There were times that Margie would come home and find Larry dressed in her underwear. He would also drink quite a bit. There were other concerning things happening in the marriage with their young child, Michelle. Even as a baby, if she cried too much, Larry would hit her. And while potty training, Larry beat Michelle so many times that when she got older, he felt compelled to apologize to his daughter. Margie also noticed that when Larry would bathe or change Michelle, he would touch her in odd ways. But Margie didn't leave it this time either. She was naive. She was 17 years old. She had never had sex education, and she wasn't sure if Larry was just doing these things that were inappropriate or if she was just inexperienced. She didn't understand. Soon Margie was pregnant again, and they would have a little girl named Melissa. Margie had put on a lot of weight, and Larry didn't waste any time telling her she was fat and out of shape and that nobody would ever want her. In the same breath, he would accuse her of being a whore. It was around this time that Margie decided she had to finish schooling. She knew in the back of her mind, without schooling, she would never be able to get away. It was also around this time Margie had her first affair. Larry had already had plenty. In 1971, Larry began to work for the Southern Railroad in Louisville. He was making decent money, but at this time he also discovered the bar scene. He would come home, get Margie, dress her up in short skirts, high heels, and tons of makeup, and bring her to these bars. He would tell everyone she was his girlfriend, not his wife. Many times he would bring couples home that he found at the bar and force Margie into having sex with them. Margie would later claim that this was something that made her very unhappy. She did not want to do it. But Larry was abusive, and he would take it out on her if she didn't. The couple ended up buying their first home, and Larry's parents gave them the down payment. It was a 3-bedroom house at 2216 Palmer Court. During this time at the railroad, Larry was making good money, and he made a bunch of friends. He was working very late, and he would bring them home most of the time at 1 or 2 in the morning. He would stagger in drunk. Some of the friends that he brought home, he would entice to have sex with Margie. One man named Pete was there very often. Larry started engaging in sexual activity with Pete as well. One night, little Michelle came crawling out of the bedroom because it was so loud in the living room. She witnessed everything. Margie tried to tell Larry that their baby was watching, and he just blew it off. Due to his constant drinking and partying, he ended up getting laid off from the railroad. But the new Albany Police Department was hiring, so Larry went down there, and before he knew it, he was hired as a probationary police officer. Everyone was so proud of him. But now, this gave Larry access to legal guns and a badge, which meant power. And Larry was somebody who liked power. He would walk around in uniform even when he wasn't on duty. Years later, his oldest daughter would say, quote, "I had twin beds. They were bunk beds. He would tie me up, like sometimes on the top bunk, but the handcuffs would go down and fall to the second bunk. And one time I fell off and I bumped my head because I fell from the top and the handcuffs slid down the pole." End quote. It was around this time that his sexual behavior with Margie intensified as well. She would come home and find him masturbating in her underwear or her lingerie. He would have her makeup on, and he began to use inanimate objects on her like vegetables. One time, he even used his nightstick on her. Larry didn't keep his police job long. He ended up assaulting a man who smiled at Margie. He and his partner were off duty that day. They got their nightsticks and their badges and went to the man's home. They got in an altercation, and the 2 police officers beat the man. He had to be put in the hospital. There was a hearing, but before they could issue an official termination, Larry quit, rather than facing the consequences of what he had done. Larry began to work for the railroad again, and Margie was still studying, trying to get into nursing. Although they thought they were done having children, in 1975, Margie gave birth to her 3rd child, Melinda. Margie only took off 6 weeks of work. She was too worried about finances. Larry was still drinking quite a bit and missing a lot of work. The bills were piling up. Michelle, the oldest girl, was 8, and at this time she would try her best to take care of Melissa and Melinda. They ended up bringing over their cousin Teddy. Teddy was a few years older than Michelle, and she did all of the motherly duties, from cleaning to caring for the babies. At one point, Teddy's mother, Charlotte, called Margie. She was concerned that Larry was being inappropriate with her girls, Eddie and Teddy. When Margie brought this up to Larry, he flew into a rage. He screamed at her, "Don't you ever accuse me of molesting a child. Are you fucking crazy? That is the sickest thing I've ever heard. Why would they say that? Where did this come from? They're white trash liars." To get revenge on Teddy for these lies, Larry lit her hair on fire, and then he laughed it off and told her it was no problem, he would fix it for her, and he ended up cutting her hair bald. The girls were no longer allowed at Margie and Larry's house. The couple continued to be on this cycle for many years. Larry drinking, taking off work, losing jobs, Margie trying to work in nursing to make the ends meet, and the girls really taking care of themselves. There was a lot of stress and a lot of fighting in that house. And of course, Larry was still bringing home random people to have sex with Margie. At one point, Margie got very sick and went into the hospital. When she came home, she was taking medication that made her virtually helpless. She couldn't drive, she couldn't work, she couldn't do anything at all. She barely got out of bed. Larry really didn't step up during this time, but he would still stay home from work, even though his parents were there to help with the kids. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Larry had a major change. He decided no more drinking, no more sex parties, no more fighting. He insisted he wanted to make this marriage work. He was becoming a good man, he said. He was becoming a good man with the help of a church that he found called Graceland Baptist. The couple went in together and confessed all of their sins and began a new life. Larry would stand up in front of the 2,000-person congregation at church and discuss every detail of his life, from the drinking to the sex. People trusted him because he was so vulnerable about telling his story. For a while, he was even going out on the circuit as a lay preacher to spread the word. This was the type of church that believed in laying hands on people, performing exorcisms. Margie and the girls would have to endure the exorcisms as well. When it came time for little Melinda's exorcism, it was done a bit differently. She was sent with a 50-year-old man to a motel for 5 hours. Melinda recalled very little of that day, except she slept. The details of what went on was never discussed. Everything changed for the family. No more pants, no more makeup, no more posters on the wall. No books, and certain toys had to go away, including Melinda's favorite doll, Patty. The doll was about 3 feet tall, and it was Melinda's best friend. She would talk to it, sleep with it. It was a doll that looked very realistic. She could make it move. Do you guys remember these dolls? I had one of them. Melinda loved this doll. Larry told her it had strange eyes and that it was possessed by demons and it had to be destroyed. He told Melinda he was going to take Patty and burn her. This terrified her because she didn't understand it was just a doll. During the second year at the church, Larry began to counsel others in the church. He chose to mainly focus on the women who were having marital issues or were in the process of divorce. Several of the women that Larry counseled began to gossip about him. Margie told Larry that the women were concerned, but he said that they were just whores that needed to be saved. One woman, Barbara, who had grown tired of the church due to the exorcisms and the way they used corporal punishment on the kids, had a session with Larry. He tried to touch her several times during the session. She made it very clear it was inappropriate. She pushed him out the door, telling him, "I will call Margie." He turned around and said, "If you do, I'll come back and shoot you." Things went downhill from there. Larry was drinking again. He started becoming vocal about the pay structure the senior staff members at the church made. He felt he should be getting as much as everyone else, even though he'd only been there 2 years. The last straw was Larry standing up in front of a full church and telling everybody the church was spending their money on their luxuries and it was wrong. They were excommunicated from the church that day. The next couple of years were more of the same: drinking, strange behavior, moving from place to place. The two older daughters were becoming more defiant of Larry, but Melinda worshipped her dad. Nothing he could do would change that. There were times, though, that Melinda just wanted to sit in her room and play with dolls and watch cartoons. During this time, Margie was either out working or looking for other men to spend her time with. Larry used that time to convince his daughters their mother did not care about them at all, and that's why she wasn't at home. At the same time, he would tell Margie that if she ever attempted to leave him, he would tell the kids about all of their sexual activities. Margie was becoming stronger. She started to stand up to Larry. She even was refusing sex. Since he didn't have her in compliance like he was used to, he turned his anger towards the oldest daughter, Michelle. During a physical fight between Larry and Margie, Michelle got in between them, trying to help her mother. Larry choked her until she blacked out. Nearing the end of the marriage, Margie would come home and tell Larry about the men she was sleeping with. One night, he cornered her in the bedroom and raped her, while his children listened to their mother screaming. One of the worst things Larry did was bring Margie to a railroad party. He allowed 20 men to take turns having sex with her. When they came home, Margie tried to drown herself in the bathtub. It was one of many suicide attempts over the course of the marriage. In the last months of the marriage, Larry assaulted Margie and threw her from a car. He was arrested for battery. For the next few months, Larry would pack his bags and leave for a few days, very dramatically. During these times, Melinda would go into a deep depression. She was so attached to her dad, even after all of the abuse she witnessed. She knew she was his favorite, and he made her feel special. The family's final move was to a home on Charlestown Road. It was purchased with a down payment from an early retirement due to a merger at the railroad. Once again, Larry made promises of a better life, and once again that didn't last. It was here that Melinda met her best friend, Crystal. They did everything together. Crystal was at the house every day. It was also in this home that both Michelle and Melissa revealed they were gay. Margie didn't want to accept it for either of her girls, but there was nothing she could do about it. The girls' partners would come to the house often. They saw how dysfunctional things were in that house. Melissa's girlfriend, Kitty, was much more outspoken. She would tell Melinda she needed to stop sleeping in the same bed with her dad. She was too old, and it was strange for a 13-year-old to be doing this. Melinda ignored her. The last straw involved a trip to a local Holiday Inn to swim at the pool. Larry brought Melinda and her cousin Lisa down there to swim. When the girls were done, they jumped into the showers to rinse off. Larry was drunk. He stole their clothing and sat outside and told them to come out and get it. Lisa began to cry. She didn't know what was going on. So Melinda, naked, ran out there and got their clothing for them. All the way home, Lisa cried. Melinda tried to reassure her that nothing was wrong and he was just drinking and acting crazy. Lisa did not care. As soon as she got back to Margie, she told her what happened. Margie was cutting something with a knife at the kitchen table. She turned the knife on Larry. He put his hand up and his thumb got cut, but he acted as though he was stabbed 1,000,000 times over, screaming and running around the streets saying that she was trying to kill him. Melinda did the same. She started screaming and telling her mother how much she hated her, and she called 911. Margie felt so guilty that she went upstairs and got all of her children's baby pictures out. She put them all around her and took a bottle of Larry's tranquilizers. After being stabilized at the hospital, Margie was transferred to a psychiatric unit at Louisville Baptist East. She stayed in the hospital for 1 month. During this time, Larry admitted himself into the Veterans Hospital seeking treatment for alcoholism and depression. When he got out, he packed his belongings and he moved to his parents' home in Avon Park, Florida. When Margie got out, she filed for divorce. This sent Melinda into a deep depression. She would beg every day for her mother to call Larry and take him back. She couldn't function without Larry there. Her grades dropped and her temper increased. For the first few months, Larry would write letters to Melinda, and he'd call occasionally, but that stopped. When she finally heard from him again, there was a photo included that said, "This is your new stepmom." Melinda reacted by seeking attention from anyone who paid her a bit of mind. Meanwhile, Margie was in a new relationship. Melinda was out getting drunk, staying out all night, experimenting with sex. Margie eloped, came home and surprised the girls. They were not pleased. Melinda did not like her new stepdad. Things seemed to just be getting worse for Melinda. Her cousin Lisa saw this and stepped in and introduced her to someone new, a girl named Amanda Heverin. Amanda was 14 years old. She lived with her dad and sister. Her mom had left them years earlier. Amanda was often mistaken for a boy. She was athletic, she had very short hair, and she played on the basketball team. She walked around the school with this certain swag. The way Amanda carried herself attracted the attention of Melinda immediately, and the two became an item. Melinda was 16, and like her sisters, had decided to date girls. Melinda was attracted to Amanda because she felt she resembled her dad, Larry. The two girls spent as much time together as they could. They'd hide out in their bedrooms, experimenting sexually. Most of the kids at school knew that the two girls were an item. They would yell out that they were the Dykes or the Lesbos, because the girls would often hold hands and kiss in the hallway. When Shanda came to the school, she and Amanda ended up in a fistfight. Both girls got detention. Amanda apologized, and soon the girls were exchanging notes. In one of the notes, Amanda wrote the following. "Shanda, I don't want you to think I'm a bad person or anything. I don't like to fight. I hate fighting. It's just when I had you on the ground getting ready to hit you, I couldn't because you looked so helpless down there. But you swung at me and missed me, so I started to hit. I want the truth. Do you even know how to fight? If not, don't feel bad. I'll help you if you want me to. I have a question to ask. I know this might sound dumb, but do you like girls? Well, do you like in kind of a way like girls? If so, I think it's cool because it's different. Is that why you're so nice to me? Do you think I'm cute or something? Please tell me the truth. I won't laugh because I think it's cool. Your friend, Amanda H." At this point, the girls had only known each other 2 weeks. Soon, she got another letter. "Dear Shanda, what was wrong with you yesterday? You sounded so sad on the phone. So what's on your mind? You want to fuck? Nah, just joking. Well, I don't know. Last night I meant everything I said to you about making love to you. You're so beautiful, hot, and sexy. I want you. I can't say it enough. Love, Amanda." The weekend following that letter, Amanda invited Shanda to sleep over. Shanda's mom wasn't very fond of Amanda, but she knew her daughter wanted to make new friends. Shanda did sleep over, and in a letter sent the following day, Amanda says, "Shanda, I had a really great time with you last night, and I'm looking forward to more. Please don't cry anymore, okay? Love, Amanda." Shanda was also writing love letters back, telling Amanda, "I loved last night too. I want more too, and always. I want what we had last night, if you want. Love, Shanda." Shanda had written in her diary a few months back about wanting to be 13, wanting to date boys, and have freedom. And now she was entangled in a situation with a girl that she'd only known for 3 weeks. She talked to a friend of hers who lived nearby her dad. She told her friend, "I've got to tell you something. I hope you don't think badly of me when I do. Please don't think I feel this way about you. And don't be scared of me, okay? I've done things with Amanda, and she says we're lesbians, but I don't feel that way. I must be bisexual. I really like guys more. Her friend Michelle said she felt as though Shanda just wanted to fit in so badly that she would do anything. Melinda was getting more curious about what might be going on with her girlfriend and Shanda. She ended up writing Shanda a note. Shanda, don't be scared of me. I just want to be your friend. I just don't like when you speak to Amanda when I'm not there. I mean, why can't all three of us be friends? You act as if you got something going on with her. Amanda and I are going to be together. She loves me and I love her. She only wants to be friends with you and you need to accept that. I don't want you sneaking behind my back. Why don't you speak to Amanda when she's with me? You need to find you a boyfriend because Amanda's mine and you can even ask her. Please talk to both of us or just forget about Amanda. You, me, and Amanda need to have a talk together. Get this squared away. Then we can all be friends. Can you meet us at lunch? Your friend Mel. Melinda hoped the note would work, but it didn't. Melinda began to snoop around and she found another note inside Amanda's locker, and it was from Shanda. When Shanda came walking through the hallway that day, Melinda grabbed her by the hair and threw her up against the lockers. Shanda insisted she didn't write the note, but Melinda knew better. She called her a bitch and told her to stay away from Amanda. Now, Shanda was afraid of Melinda, but that didn't stop her from going to a dance at Hazelwood with Amanda. Melinda didn't go. She stayed out drinking, and she convinced one of her friends to take her out to wait in the parking lot for the girls to come outside. When they did, she approached them and began screaming and ended up hitting Amanda. A few days later, a friend of Melinda's introduces her to an older girl. While Melinda wasn't interested, she figured maybe it would work to get Amanda jealous, and it did. But Amanda liked having both Shanda and Melinda fighting for her attention. So while promising Melinda she belonged to her, she was writing letters like this to Shanda. Shanda, I'm sorry for all the stuff that's been happening. I never meant to get you into any trouble. I'm sorry, and if you don't want to see me anymore, I understand, okay? I'm all yours. I'm not Melinda's. She fucked up my life, and I finally understand because for so long, my dad's been trying to tell me that Melinda was a bad person. I just didn't believe him. But I realized it myself. She's not the kind of person I should be hanging around with. Please find it in your heart to forgive me, because I probably won't be able to look at you without crying. I feel so bad for what I've done. I should have listened to you when you said this was all wrong, but I'm stupid and I didn't. Don't worry about Melinda anymore. My dad says I can't hang around with her. I can only hang with you. My dad thinks you're the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So please forgive the way I acted around you, okay? Love, Amanda. This was a very confusing time for Shanda. She didn't understand if Amanda and Melinda were still together or not. She started trying to make new friends, and some of them were boys. Amanda was extremely jealous, even though she was still seeing Melinda. She started writing Shanda these letters, asking her why she was around these people, and if she didn't like her anymore, she just needed to tell her. I'm really starting to hate Melinda. I never thought I would, but it is happening. I don't care anymore if she even talks to me. I'm just gonna tell her to fuck off. I'm so pissed at her, okay? Okay? I'm all yours. Shanda, honey, I do love you. I just feel like Melinda has me in some trance. I don't know how to get out of it, and I'm scared. If I try to get out of it, something bad's gonna happen, and I'm scared to death. I don't think I would ever tell Melinda that we were going out. She would probably kill you. Yes, I love you a lot. My honey. Love, Amanda. Shanda was no longer sure of what was what. She started to become quiet. Her once bubbly personality was fading. She was cutting school, not doing her hair. She didn't care how she looked anymore. She quit the basketball team. She would just stay locked in her room for hours. Her mother tried to get through to her, but nothing worked. One day while she was in school, her mom went through her room. She saw a note from Amanda teaching Shanda how to sign her name on a detention slip. Jackie went straight to the school and was told that her daughter was often in detention. Her progress report was all Fs. When confronted and asked why are you still hanging out with Amanda? Shanda lied, saying, well, other girls were threatening her and Amanda was protecting her. Jackie had always known her daughter to be honest, but she could feel she was lying. She kept a close eye on her from then on. One day, a piece of mail was returned. It was addressed to Amanda. It was missing a stamp, which is why it was returned. Inside of it was a photo of Shanda. On the back it said, Amanda, I miss you, and I will always love you no matter what happens. I miss the touch of your soft body. Jackie immediately called her ex-husband and his wife to come over and have a sit-down with Shanda. All of the parents assured her she was safe, they loved her, and they wanted what was best. They tried to get details out of her, but it didn't work. When she went to bed, the adults decided they were removing her from Hazelwood and enrolling her in Our Lady of Perpetual Help Catholic School. They really hoped that this would help to solve the Amanda problem. Unfortunately, it didn't. The two girls found ways through other friends to still see each other. Melinda got wind that the two would be at a dance together. She showed up and told Amanda to tell Shanda in her face right now that it was over, and she did. In a letter on November 26th, Melinda wrote to Amanda, Amanda, I think we need to talk this out. If you haven't noticed, all these uncalled fights have been because of Shanda. Yes, I'm hurting. I'm pissed at you. I can't believe you. You better straighten up your act, Missy. I'm sick of hearing and seeing her name. I think we should let me cool off because I'm still just let down with you. You have not shown me no improvement. She isn't gone. You haven't gotten rid of her. And this is your problem, not mine. Until her name and writing is off your shit, I'm not going to hang with you or your problems. I'm real mad at you. I feel like I need to cry. I want Shanda dead. Love, Melinda. Amanda's dad found that and many other letters in her room. He immediately took them down to the county juvenile probation officer. The officer contacted Melinda and ordered her to stay away from Amanda or she would face charges. Melinda was furious. She began to tell many of her friends she wanted to kill Shanda. She felt it was all due to her. She asked advice from her friend Crystal. What do you think the best way to get rid of a body would be? Crystal replied, put it in a barrel of leaves and set it on fire, I guess. Meanwhile, Shanda was doing well. Meeting new people. She joined the basketball team at the new school. She started dating a boy. She was getting back to her old self. Her mom was really happy to see her daughter smiling again. Things were starting to really look up for them. On Christmas, Amanda tried to call, but Jackie answered the phone and told her never to call again. On January 2nd, Shanda wrote her friend Lisa a note. I can't take all the pressure. I wish she would just stop calling and following me. Jackie talked with her daughter in early January. She asked her if she felt she was given a second chance by transferring to the new school. Shanda said yes. I didn't think I could find my way back. I'd been so bad and done so many things, I didn't know what I was going to do. To get her mind off of Amanda, Melinda began to hang out with a new crowd she had met previously. Carrie Pope, a girl who was clearly punk. She had dyed hair, she would wear shocking clothing. She described herself as butch. She had come out and was very vocal about her sexuality. Carrie introduced her to two brothers, Larry and Terry Leatherberry. The brothers were very smart, but they weren't interested in school. They preferred Dungeons and Dragons and reading about the occult. Larry was especially interested in the darker side of the occult. The boys lived on their own with a roommate. Both of the brothers were bisexual and part of a clan that was now forming under Melinda and Carrie. Larry and Terry invited a friend, Lori Tackett, to join them. Lori, too, was bisexual and had a fascination with the occult. Lori wanted out of the town she was in, and she called the brothers to see if they could help. Carrie went out to get Lori, and Melinda came along. At first glance, Melinda was intimidated by Lori's appearance. She was stocky with short blonde hair, a cocky strut, and dark clothing. Lori and Carrie immediately became close, and she told her all about her life. Lori's dad, George, was a felon. Her mom, Peggy, was a devout fundamentalist who belonged to a church called Lighthouse on the Hill. They spoke in tongues and had visions. Peggy would force Lori to wear dresses and listen to gospel hymns. She wasn't allowed to watch television either. Lori obeyed, but would write in her diary that she didn't believe any of it. Her younger brother found the diary and showed it to his mom. The final visit Lori made to the church was very uncomfortable. The preacher spoke about homosexuality, and Lori was gay. Lori was done. She began hanging out more with the Leatherberries, dyeing her hair, sometimes shaving it all off. She was also cutting herself. She said she did this to relieve stress, but also to paint pictures in her art. Her mother tried to have Lori go through an exorcism, but Lori refused and locked herself in the room. After several more cutting incidents, Lori was sent to Jefferson Hospital. On her intake paperwork, she wrote, "I like to write, draw, ice skate, and do gymnastics. I try to be a good friend to my friends." When they asked why she was there, she said, "Really, I don't need any help. Everyone tries something once." Lori told them she got along with most everyone, but she did admit she was depressed, lonely, sad, and bored. She was concerned about others' approval, but she wasn't suicidal and didn't feel she belonged in the hospital. When her parents came to the hospital, they sat down to interview with the therapist. The parents stated they felt helpless in controlling Lori. Both parents suffered from self-esteem and were antisocial. A quote from her dad: "Some people stand out in a crowd. I can shout in a crowd and not be noticed. She may have to learn that she's the same way." End quote. Lori's goal for family therapy was to get her parents to trust her more. After a week in the hospital, Lori trusted the therapist enough to tell him a few of her thoughts. She said she recalled hallucinating, having imaginary friends around the age of 6. She had 2 visions of 2 small little men who would talk to her and cheer her up. She would often have losses of time where several hours would be gone and she couldn't remember anything. Sometimes she would find herself in locations and didn't know how she got there. She did remember a neighbor who molested her when she was about 8. She vaguely recalled being hit by her parents but couldn't recall any details. A few weeks in, Larry's dad called and said he wanted his daughter discharged. The doctors convinced him Lori needed to remain there. She wasn't released until April of 1991. She had been there around 2 months. When she came out, she started home study. By June, Lori had run away to the Leatherberries' house until the police found her and brought her home. By July, Lori was put on Prozac. Lori had stopped seeing her therapist. She dropped out of school by September. She was now 17 and planned on making it on her own. Carrie and Lori, as well as the Leatherberries, began to get into drugs. Lori tried to get sober a few times, but running with this crowd, it didn't work. Money wasn't always readily available because none of them had steady jobs, so many times they used sex as a payment. After a few months without any money coming in, Lori had to return home. Her dad got her a used car, and she started working at a local Kmart. She'd go back and forth to visit her friends, but she was becoming really strange, stranger than the rest of them. She'd tell them about dreams of dead babies in trees. And once she told Carrie she would like to kill someone for the publicity. She'd like to stab someone to see what it felt like. She began drinking her own blood and cutting herself, even more than she did before. She would act like she could channel the dead. She would perform this act in front of her friends, going into these trances and changing her voice. All of this was too weird for the group, and they began to distance themselves. Lori decided to try Melinda. Melinda wasn't really fond of Lori, and she'd heard about the strange things that she was doing. But Melinda was kind of on her own, so she figured she'd give Lori a try. Lori was determined to keep and have Melinda as a friend. On January 8th of 1992, she invited Melinda to a concert in Louisville. The concert was called Hardcore. It's a punk and heavy metal mix. Melinda invited a few friends, but nobody wanted to go. They had all heard about Lori. But Melinda made a deal. She told Lori, "Okay, I will go if we can make one stop afterwards. I want to stop at Shanda's house. I have a plan. I want to kill her." Lori said that's not a problem, and informed Melinda she was going to invite two others along, Tony Lawrence and Hope Rippey. Lori knew Tony would never come along if she told her about this plan. Hope, on the other hand, clung to Lori, always trying to make her feel better when she was being bullied for being different. Hope came from a family of problems. Her parents were divorced and the 4 kids were split up. 3 went with their mom, 1 with their dad. The parents eventually got back together, but they never remarried. The boys in the family often fought, rubbing off that spirit onto Hope. Like the other girls, Hope was an athlete. She was also a very talented musician, but she gave up sports and hobbies when she entered high school. Hope was very sexually active and had been for many years. She really had no goals in life except one day getting married and having a few kids. But for now, the only thing she really cared about was fun. One of her best friends was Tony Lawrence. They had known each other since they were small children. Tony was much different from Hope or any of these other girls. She was shy, an average student who wrote poems and participated in several school activities. She did typical teenage stuff, and she wasn't into anything outrageous at all. In 1990, Tony had been raped by a boy at her friend's house. She never told anyone, but her dad found a letter she had written to her friend naming this boy. Her dad immediately called the police, but they did nothing but slap the boy on the wrist because they were both minors. When the kids in school found out, many of them started to bully Tony for turning him in. Tony tried to hurt herself by slashing her wrists. It was one of a few times that Tony tried to hurt herself. That day, Hope called Tony to invite her. She was hesitant. She was afraid of Lori. Hope didn't tell Tony about the plans with Shanda. When she asked permission to go, Tony's mom immediately said no. She didn't want her daughter around Lori. Tony pretended to agree and then lied, telling her mom she would instead spend the night at another friend's house. The girls met up, they went to Walmart, and then to get food. As they were driving, Lori asked Hope, "Hey, did you tell her yet?" And Tony asked, "Tell her what?" Lori replied, "We're gonna kill a girl." Tony said, "No, you're not." And Lori replied, "Yes, we are." Tony decided to ignore her, thinking she was trying to make her believe something that wasn't true so she could later make fun of her. As they drove, Lori started talking more about where they were going and what they were going to do. They planned to take Shanda to the witch's castle. The castle was actually an old stone mansion. They stopped there to show Tony, and it was still daylight, so it didn't look very scary to her. The girls went to Melinda's, and Tony's first impression of her was good. Melinda seemed nice and normal, She offered them some clothing and shoes to wear to the concert if they felt like it. At one point, she left the room. She came back with a rusty kitchen knife saying, "This is what I'm going to use to scare Shanda." Tony was immediately afraid, wondering if all of this was true and what was happening. Melinda began to tell them what Shanda had done to her. This weekend, Shanda was at her dad's house, and Melinda knew it. They decided to drive over. Hope and Tony were instructed to go and knock on the door and tell Shanda that Amanda really needed to speak with her. Shanda opened the door, and Hope said, "Hi, is Shanda here?" Shanda replied, "I am Shanda." They explained that Amanda really needed to talk to her. So she went out onto the porch so her dad wouldn't hear Amanda's name. She told the girls she was getting ready to go to a party. If they wanted, they could bring Amanda back later around midnight and she would talk to her. Shanda's dad overheard them say Amanda's name and immediately questioned her about it. She lied. Before long, her friends came to get ready for the party with her, and her dad forgot about the girls at the door. The foursome left for the concert. Neither Hope or Tony was impressed with the music or the crowd. They decided to go sit in the car while Lori and Melinda remained inside. While in the car, two boys from school came up and started talking to them. They talked for hours. One of the boys sensed something was wrong with Tony, and he asked her if she was okay. Hope looked at her as if to say, "Don't even think about telling them." But Tony was nervous and had to get it out. She told the boys what Melinda and Lori wanted to do. They could see Tony was scared and told her, "You can just come with us." Tony wanted to, but Hope said, "No, Lori will be pissed if we just leave." So Tony stayed. The concert ended. Melinda was hyped to get back to Shanda's house. Shanda had arrived home and asked her dad if her friend Michelle could stay over. He said no. The next day we have to get up early and do some work on the house. Her dad and stepmom said goodnight. The last words Steve said and heard from his daughter were, "I love you. Good night." The girls arrived just as a friend of Shanda's brothers arrived. They asked him to get Shanda. Shanda came to the porch, and Lori and Hope were waiting. She asked where Amanda was. Lori replied, "We're going to meet her. Come on." She went down and got into the car. Hope asked Shanda, "Did you know Amanda and Melinda broke up?" Shanda replied, "Yeah, Amanda and I were together about 4 months." Melinda, who had been hiding in the back seat, popped up and grabbed the back of Shanda's head, placing the knife to her throat, stating, "I bet you didn't expect to see me here, did you, bitch?" Shanda cried out, "Please, Melinda, don't hurt me."